Hello there and welcome. In this lesson we'll be painting the Quetzalcoatlus Pterosaur model we created a few lessons ago. So let's get into it. A tear-off palette is ideal for this project. In this first step we'll be using acrylic paints. For a full list of all the paints used, the steps taken, and to get this colour guide you can download the lesson plan in the above link or at our website. So the first thing we need to do is lay a very thin undercoat over our pterosaur, and I start by painting the head titanium white. There are lots of colours dry brushed over areas to create variation within the colour. I add yellow ochre to the white along with a touch of Payne's grey and paint it into the underside. It is important to get the tone into all those little nooks and crannies, as a lighter tone will be dry brushed over the top. I then lay in an ivory black into the top side of our pterosaur, and then take it over the whole of his body. I use the acrylic paint straight out of the tube and apply it with a filbert. While I'm at it, I lay black into the cheek area and around the eyes. I then dry brush over the eyes, making sure I keep some of that black in the crevices. I briefly mentioned it before, but creating variation to colours like this adds to the realism. With figure painting, flat, straight colours tend to look contrived. Next, raw umber is dry brushed over the black. It's not shown here, but a really great way to make sure that your brush has the correct amount of paint on it to dry brush is to wipe the excess paint off onto a paper towel. Build up the tone slowly, as if the paint gets into those nooks and crannies, the effect is lost and it's a real pain to fix. Next, I dry brush burnt umber over the raw umber. An even drier brush is used so the coat is even thinner. Burnt umber has more of a red tinge than raw umber and adds some warmth. I'll say also that when dry brushing, the previous coat must be bone dry. While the coat is drying, I turn my attention to the cheek area and dry brush in some crimson. One theory is that the cheeks might have become flushed with blood and changed colour for mating displays or to convey emotion, not unlike some modern parrots. I lighten the crimson with a touch of lemon yellow and lightly drag it over the high points only. I create the final dry brush tone from yellow ochre and burnt umber, and again very carefully lay it over the body. This brings out the highlights on the coat. Paleontologists believe this coat was a sort of fur feather covering that they refer to as cyanofibers. The presence of these cyanofibers was thought to be for insulation rather than any aerodynamic function. I only cover the fibres up to the shoulders and hind legs at this stage. For the next step, I'll be using raw sienna in H2O water mixable oil paint. I use this as I can lay on a very thin consistent coat without it drying in on me and giving a patchy look. I scrub it onto the surface and manipulate the coat until I have the correct opacity. I lay it on slightly thicker over the membranes to suggest light coming through to some extent, as the membranes would have been quite thin. It is interesting, the mechanics of pterosaur flight are not completely understood at this time, and a leading mechanics of flight scientist concluded that they could not stay aloft. It is, however, theorised that they might have been able to fly due to the oxygen-rich, dense atmosphere. Next, I follow the same procedure with titanium white on his neck and underside. I paint a yellow pink in around the head, then paint the head in turquoise and create a random pattern that transitions into the yellow pink. I paint the crest ivory black, then glaze it with burnt umber. The beak is painted with a mix of yellow ochre with titanium white. I apply the coat smoothly and keep any colour out of the black between the upper and lower mandibles. Paleontologists were amazed at how similar the beak shape is to that of a modern stork, only obviously the modern stork's head isn't the size of a car. I add titanium white into the mixture and dry brush it into the tip. I can then paint in some titanium white markings on the inside of the limbs. There is no other reason for this other than for aesthetics. But the more I read about prehistoric animals, the more I think anything could be possible with these fascinating creatures. So you have total artistic license when painting a model like this. Nature does, however, at times seem to make some unusual colour choices and place interesting shapes next to one another. I then paint my little friend's toenails with Payne's grey and highlight it with light grey. The head crest, I decided, looked a little bland, so I reapplied turquoise and dry brushed it into the umber. I then dry brushed the area around the eyes with more of that yellow pink and apply some medium yellow into the eyeball and finish it off with a spot of white to suggest a highlight. The last stage is to create an environment. I think this step really finishes off the model. If you have a look at some of our other sculptures, we have shown the methods on how to create mud with puddles and gravel. But with this one, he will be situated on a sandy beach. Once the perimeter line is drawn in, I squeeze out some Montmartre PVA glue. I tend to use quite a lot of it as it's a pain if it dries out before you can apply the sand. Use a brush to push it into all the little nooks and crannies and try to create an undulating surface with the glue. Next I can apply the sand. I find it easiest to apply it with a sheet of paper as you have more control over the application. The sand I'm using is from a children's sandpit and is very fine. At some hobby shops you can buy all sorts of fine scenery materials that you can scatter over the glue. You can also place small rocks into the glue. Just remember that scale is important. If you want to suggest footprints and trackways, it's best to use Montmartre modelling paste first. Create the elements, let the paste dry and then add the glue and scenery material. Let the glue dry before you blow off the excess sand and voila! Well, thanks for watching. We hope you've enjoyed our little video. Stay tuned and keep on creating.